Welcome. This is my presentation on the second personality theory, and I'm going to focus on attachment theory because it's my favorite one. All right, so I'm going to take a look at what attachment theory looks like today in modern times, and then I'm going to discuss what the different attachment styles are, and I'm going to focus on dismissive avoidant because that's essentially what Tony Stark has. And we're going to talk about what those symptoms are in adults, and what Tony displays in Age of Ultron. All right, so attachment theory today. So since John Bowlby's conception of attachment theory, it has evolved and been added to by several people, not just psychologists, but certainly including Mary Ainsworth, Cindy Hazen, and Philip Shaver, Sherry Madigan, Leslie Atkinson, Kristen Lauren, and Diane Benoit. I'm not sure. I'm going to mispronounce so many names. So many. For something very much in general as a definition, attachment theory is something that explains how humans form relationships and how they behave in those relationships. And this is from a study called Subscription Commerce, an Attachment Theory Perspective by Renee Hubert Kirschenbaumer, Danielle Kreimer, Thomas Focht, and Andreas Isingrish. And this lovely study applied attachment theory to commerce, to marketing, essentially, especially online subscriptions. And they concluded that in order for subscription services to be more valuable to the consumer, it was important that there was a type of relationship between the services, the online subscription retailer, and the customer. And again, this service has to deliver either functional benefits or must, to some extent, serve hedonic goals in order to become adopted. And thereby, they identified that brand attachment is a critical driver for positive attitudes towards online subscription services. That quote is from page 109 on that study. That this is a good application of attachment theory because it shows just how diverse this attachment theory is, and how easy it is to apply to so many different experiences and fields within psychology, within the sciences in general. And that's honestly why I picked it, because, marketing isn't always something that people first think of when they think of attachment theory. They're usually thinking of children, and in the context of very young children, and parenting styles and that sort of thing. So yeah, I thought that was a good way to show how diverse this theory can be. What are all the attachment styles? So there's many different styles that are observed in adult relationships that affect the quality of those relationships. And those 4 styles are secure, avoidant or dismissive, anxious, ambivalent, or resistant, and disorganized. This is from a study titled Intimate Partner Stalking Pursuit, a Pathophysiology of Attachment Style by Catherine Creamer and Christopher Hand. Now, they were focusing on attachment theory and how it applies to intimate partner pursuit, specifically stalking and kind of obsessive behavior towards intimate partners or ex-intimate partners. And of course, they focus on avoidant or dismissive. Creamer and Hand came to the conclusion that participants with anxious attachment have a increased heart rate and more cognitive disruptions, etc., than participants with avoidant attachment in response to romantic breakup scenarios. So essentially, they concluded that a person's attachment style dictates how they react to a breakup, and therefore whether or not they're motivated to do any sort of obsessive stalker behavior. And again, another great example of how diverse attachment theory is, because this is applying it to sexual harassment and sexual assault, which is often what stalking and such obsessive behavior usually leads to. So it's a good way to study that, and through that the lens of attachment theory, and understand not only understand where these behaviors come from, and why the person might be doing it consciously or unconsciously, but we're going to focus on avoidant dismissive style. So, avoidant dismissive style is defined by the behaviors typical of the people that are impacted by this particular attachment style. For example, avoidant people tend to display behaviors such as anger or withdrawal to avoid conflict and show a positive view of themselves but a negative view of others. So lots of high self-esteem but not so much other people. And this comes from a study titled Parental Bonding in Retrospect and Adult Attachment Style, a comparative study between Spanish, Italian, and Japanese cultures, by Maria Konecki, Honica, Oscar Lopez de la Natal, Jose Luis Martinez, Rubio Kazuyika, Shinohara, Michelle Jinyi Nuya, Dagmara Demetrio, Gianluca Esposito, and Giuseppe Iandolo. I definitely butchered all of those names, and I am so sorry. This study used attachment style to understand the differences between specific cultures and why parental bonding was so different. And they came to the conclusion that variances in attachment style depended on different factors per culture. For example, in Italian culture, it was gender, and in Japanese culture, it was age. I chose this study because, again, it shows the diverse application of attachment style. So we went from commerce, and marketing, and retail to stalking and sexual harassment, and right on to recalled parental bonding between different cultures, and trying to explain why those aspects are different between different cultures. So again, another great example of how we can apply attachment theory to all kinds of things to try and explain different types of behavior, and in this case, how close a person is to their parents. Now that we've defined attachment theory in general and what avoidant dismissive is in general, we're going to talk about it more specifically. So these different aspects are, as you can see on the slide, fair weather friends, so they have a lot of friends and sometimes sexual partners or both, but they aren't really close to a lot of them. And they often independent and to an extreme point where they do not rely on other people for anything, much less emotional support, and most certainly not anything material, any of their needs whatsoever. All of these markers and symptoms come from a study titled Marital Interpersonal Pathologies Questionnaire for Men with Avoidant Attachment Symptoms, Development and Validation by Nair Arian Farr, Simon Hossein, and Azra Itimadi. And this was a study that tried to identify marital interpersonal pathologies in men with avoidant attachment and to categorize those things, realizing that it was possible to do so. And their analysis indicated that 3 factors: emotional pathologies, communication pathologies, and functional pathologies, as well as 11 different subcategories as marital interpersonal pathologies in men with avoidant attachment symptoms. Therefore, evaluating these 3 factors and employing appropriate interventions can be useful in resolving marital interpersonal problems encountered by men with avoidant attachment. So some of the aspects that they talk about are high levels of independence and denying any emotional anything, and they don't seek support from others, and they also believe that they themselves are very awesome and amazing, and deserving of affection and care. And however, though, they also believe that everyone around them is either incapable of giving such affection or unwilling to, and kind of intermingled with denying any emotional responses or anything, or any self-disclosure, closeness with anyone, is they often use a lot of logical arguments and don't use a lot of empathy when they're having any kind of conflict with a significant other or friends. And what are these in Tony Stark? So I think, especially in Age of Ultron, all of these symptoms and markers are very obvious. For example, Fairweather Friends, the party that he goes to, that he initiates, that he plans, that he attends and invites, I believe her name is Helen, too, one of the doctors in the movie that was helping, that eventually gets mind controlled by the staff later. So he's very social. He's got a lot of friends, but not a whole lot of people that he's close to. You could say that the Avengers are exceptions to that closeness, but at the same time, I would say that he uses them more than he is close with them, though I assume he does consider them as friends. And independence is another very obvious marker in Tony Stark. He's almost always working alone. He very rarely asks for help when he's working on anything. And if he does ask the Avengers for help, then it's something that he uses them for. It's a means to an end more than it is call for emotional support or any of the like. He's doing it as almost like I need to do this. I don't have any other choice. Like when you plan an event, you don't have a choice but to wait on other people to confirm your bookings and stuff like that. But of course, with the Avengers, it's always saving the world, so it's always super important. And Tony very rarely exhibits any emotion. For example, Wanda gives him a vision of his worst fear, and how does he react? One single manly tear, and then just walks it off like nothing ever happened. So did he ever reach out to anyone? Did he ever tell anyone? Did he ever discuss that incident with anyone or any of his fears since the Avengers, the movie? Since any of that? Did he discuss any of it? Did he even... No. The one time he tells it to Nick Fury. And of course, Nick Fury isn't super emotional either. So he basically tells Tony, like, don't worry, she's just getting to your head. And of course, Tony corrects him and is like, no, that's not the case. That's me. And unfortunately, because reasons, the movie cuts that conversation off before we can hear more. In addition, Tony only asks Banner for help when he himself has already realized and decided that he can't do it by himself. He does need Banner's help, and only lets him in through manipulation. And granted, though Tony is telling the truth in that conversation, he is still believing that he needs to manipulate Banner into helping him, or he won't help at all. Because, again, the greater good, right? Tony uses logical arguments all the time. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's all he uses. Even in convincing the Avengers to go after Ultron and completely not admitting necessarily that it was his fault that Ultron was created in the first place. He just moves on and tries to deal with the problem instead of admitting to any mistakes or talking about why he decided on the project in the first place. Nothing, because, why tell your friends when you need emotional support? You just suppress it all, right? That's what Tony does. All right, so that concludes this presentation. Here are my references. I believe that's everything. I hope you enjoyed this one better than the last one. And I will see you in the next one.